Hi all, Mark here, taking you through another knowledge sharing installment as part of the value add ADDX provides its clients. In this session, we'll be looking at approval and alert rules, commonly referred to as ANA rules. Now, the ANA engine itself underlies the entire Greentree system and is an extremely important tool for the automation of records and processes within your Greentree system. So this is aimed at those of you who administer your Greentree system, and the outcome is pretty much a base understanding of the building blocks of an ANA rule. So, onwards and upwards. Use the scenario of entering a new supplier record. A good example of this might be, you enter a new supplier and it has to go for approval because you have to verify that their public liability insurance is in place, and they have to provide, relevant details to prove that. So while you're waiting on that, the supplier has to be set to inactive so no one can use it. So yeah, that's the scenario we'll use. So to get to ANA, you go to Workflow, Approvals and Alerts, and Rule Maintenance. Brings up this form. The building blocks that go into a rule are quite straightforward. Essentially, it's when does the rule run, and that can be based on a few things. So for example, here we've got it can be form driven, so when you enter a record or something like that, it can be based on new or on change or on delete. It could be based on just an instant alert immediately on a particular record type. You can even schedule a rule to run. So examples of that might be, scheduled reports, or even the online backup that Greentree does every night. So it's based on a scheduled rule. And finally, programmatic, which is probably getting a little bit too complex for something like this. Next is, well, what does the rule do? And that's based on a set of conditions and then a set of actions. Following that, you can actually filter down and have the rule run either across all companies within your Greentree system, or even just one, and then finally just some notes. Importantly, if you're dealing sort of with other aspects, you can actually import and export rules. A good example of why you might do something like that, and this is something you should probably adhere to all the time due to the nature and the power of ANA rules, is whenever you're creating a new rule, do it in your test system first, particularly if you sort of leave a couple of open ends and things go a little bit haywire. Always better to have that happen in test rather than your live production environment. But if the rule works in test, then you can export it from test and then import it into live without having to recreate the whole thing from scratch. So let's kick off with this. So I'm going to say this rule is going to be called supplier approval. This part here is, well, what sort of records does this rule focus on? Quite simply for us, it's going to be supplier. Alright, now that was quite straightforward. I just entered supplier. You'd probably need a little bit of an understanding of how Greentree stores its data in the back end to know where to go to. Quite a lot of it is self-explanatory, or you can find it straight away. Some parts, when you build sort of larger and more complex rules, might take a little bit more. But that's what ADDX support or your consultants are there for, as knowledge holders, and they can give you access to that. The next thing is, when do I want my rule to run? Well, I want this thing to occur every time a new supplier is entered. Okay, so it's form driven and only on new. That's all I need from this particular panel. Then we go to what to do. So the conditions of this rule. Now, here's where I can say this rule only kicks off or only fires when certain conditions have met. So if I was sort of filtering in on a whole bunch of different things, then I would do record selection criteria. But because my rule is very straightforward and simple, I want it to run on every single new supplier record that gets created. So for me, it's just all records. And then you hit add. There it is. Okay, so is there any preliminary processing that needs to occur with this rule? Well, for me, actually there is, because I want to make my supplier inactive, because I don't want anyone else in the finance team or wherever to be able to access my new supplier until approval has been granted. So I'm going to select that and click Add. And then what actions do I want my rule to take? Well, there's probably a few actions here. The primary one is going to be going to require approval on this supplier. So that's the first thing I'm going to select. All right, you'll get this box that pops up whether you can sort of narrow down approval from a particular person or a supervisor or whatnot, or if you've got relevant approval groups and approval codes set up in your system, you can select this option, and for me it's just managerial approval. Hit OK. That's all well and good. So yet the person who's actually like entering this new supplier, they sort of need to be kept in the loop as well, just as part of your whole employee interaction side of things. So not only am I going to automatically send this supplier record for approval, I also want to do a quick pop-up message that displays each and every time this occurs. And it's just going to be quite a simple one. Supplier has been sent for approval. Hit OK. Alright, and this is just a good demonstration of how you can actually have multiple things occur based on the action of a single sort of condition, so to speak. Then we move along. If approved, well, I'm going to make my supplier active, as well as I want to send an email to the person who would normally be looking after the supplier type records. And for my demonstration purposes, that's going to be Chelsea. And I'm going to put in here supplier notification. And then I'm just going to say supplier. And in fact, actually, instead of just saying like supplier has been approved, well, that's no good to Chelsea because she'll go, well, what supplier? So I'm actually going to drop in a tad bit of smarts here and go supplier name, and just to give it a little bit more relevance, and so she can search on the code as well, has been approved. Alright, what these things are is just like placeholders. And so the rule, the ANA rule, and even the underlying engine is smart enough to go, alright, well, supplier X has been sent for approval, process, the supplier X got approved, and then it comes to the email side of it, and it goes, well, I know what supplier X is, and it will drop in the supplier X's name and supplier X's code into this email. So yes, definitely take advantage of that. And then I'll just say, please take the appropriate action. Now, I'm going to copy this because I'm going to use it again. Hit OK. Alright, that's done the approval side. Now, if that manager rejected it for whatever reason, well, we need to do something here as well. I still want to send an email. Still going to send it to Chelsea, and supplier notification. I'm going to copy paste, but instead I'm going to put in here rejected for the following reason. And see here, I've got reject text. Just chuck that in there, and please take the appropriate action. Hit OK. Now, there's no need to do anything else. The supplier, because of the preliminary process of making it inactive, well, the supplier is still inactive, so I don't need to sort of tell the rule to do anything else. So once that sort of workflow runs through, it'll be up to Chelsea to do whatever she needs to do from there. So what we've just achieved is a very basic rule of having a supplier go for approval whenever that a new supplier record is entered. And I guess proof is in the pudding, so let's create a new supplier record. This supplier, let's call it MWD1. MWD1, Mark's World Domination Company. Ooh, always spelling mistakes during this sort of stuff. Company. And that's all I need. It'll probably give me a ABN alert. Yes, it does. Hit OK. I'll bring that in here. There's my notification that I had automatically pop up. Hit close. Now let's just refresh that record, because what we're expecting to see now is for it to be set to inactive. Excellent. And in the approval section, I'll bring that in here. There it is. So it's set to managerial approval. So it's basically a very good demonstration of some automation and process sort of boundaries that can be put in place by a very simple rule. Now, I guess if you can sort of imagine where else you can do that, another good place is specifically around employee onboarding and whatnot. Yeah, you can sort of go through your life. Just always keep in the back of your mind, do stuff in test first, because yeah, the power of the system will make it quite easy to make a few things go crazy and haywire. So I hope you've learned something, and I'll see you again for the next knowledge sharing video. Alright, bye.